So good morning. My name's Ian Ferris, and I'm the President and CEO of the Ottawa Chamber of Commerce. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to our first Ottawa Business Growth Survey breakfast. The Ottawa Chamber, Welsh LLP, Abacus Data, and the Ottawa Business Journal collaborated to create the Growth Survey. It's a much more expanded version of the old Business Confidence Index survey that the Chamber had run with Abacus. And this survey, the survey was open from March 30th to April 30th, and we had, I believe, over 450 respondents, companies that responded. You'll find a copy of the results in a magazine format that Michael Curran and the Ottawa Business Journal had put together. So in that document, you'll see a number of different results, and you can follow along as our speakers address various topics. So again, this is the inaugural event. It's good to have, we've got over 325 people from the business community here, and that's, I think that shows, it's a testament to a thirst for data and a thirst for information, and hopefully we'll respond by providing you with that. Before I continue, I'd like to introduce our head table. So we'll start with Dr. David Coletto, the CEO of Abacus Data, and we'll hear from David shortly. Cheryl Jensen, President and CEO of Algonquin College, and Cheryl will be one of our panelists. Our second panelist is Cyril Leader, President of Senators Sports and Entertainment. And the final panelist is Jeff Westeinday, who's the Vice Chair of the Innovation Center. I believe it's Vice Chair, or past Chair of the Innovation Center. Vice. Let's go with Vice. Thank you, Jeff. And co-founder of Windmill Development. Jim McConnery will be our moderator. Jim is with Welsh LLP, and will be taking over after David. Bruce Raganol, the Director of Business Development for Welsh, and Bruce was one of the architects of the Growth Survey, so thanks, Bruce. Michael Curran, the publisher of the Ottawa Business Journal, is our final head table attendee. So if I could have a round of applause for them, please. So during the presentations this morning, for those of you on social media, we've got a hashtag for you. It's hashtag OBGS, which is just the acronym for Ottawa Business Growth Survey. So we'll urge you to use that in your tweets. So I'll just give a quick overview of how we're going to run this. In a few minutes, or in a minute or so, I'll invite David up, David Coletto, to present a keynote address and take us through the findings. Following David, Jim McConnery from Welsh will say a few words, and he'll give us some insight into some live polling that we're going to be doing today. It'll take place throughout the morning, and again, I want to thank Welsh for their, Bruce and Jim and team at Welsh LLP for their great work in partnering with us on the Growth Survey. Then we're going to go to a panel discussion. As I mentioned, we've got our three esteemed panelists, and Jim will take them through the run. Finally, we're going to end up with some questions, so we'll have audience questions at the end, given time. So we might, I think we're scheduled to go to 9:30, so I just want to prepare everyone that this is not a typical event that the Chamber and OBJ run where it's 9 o'clock and out, so please be prepared for that. Now I'll welcome up Dr. David Coletto, who's the CEO of Abacus Data.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for coming out. It's rare these days that people clap a pollster, so thank you for that. If you're from Alberta or BC, it's been a tough few years, but it's a real pleasure to be here to present some of the results, and I'm not going to go into every detail. What was one of the most exciting things about this year's survey is that working with Welch and the OBJ and the Chamber, we actually ran a much larger survey, and for those of you who completed it, thank you for your time and for doing it. And if you didn't have a chance to do it, hopefully when we do it again next year, you'll be part of the sample. What I'm going to do today is, as I said, go over the results. And Ian gave away a little bit about who participated in the survey, but we interviewed over 460 business leaders, completed at least half of the survey. We included those responses because the front end of the survey included the business confidence questions. But in all, 364 business leaders from across the National Capital Region completed the survey between March 30th and April 30th, 2015. And we recruited people from a number of methods. So all chamber members were invited to participate. The Ottawa Business Journal sent it out to their lists. Welch invited their contacts, their clients, to participate, and then there were some online recruitment that was done on a number of different channels, including the Ottawa Business Journal. Now, I'm happy to report that overall, things are looking quite good in Ottawa. On a number of measures, Ottawa business leaders are telling us that in the past 6 months, and as they look to the future, they see sales growth, they see that their market for their business is going to grow as well. More are saying that access to credit is a little bit easier than it was in the past 6 months, and more are going to be recruiting new employees. So the overall business confidence is up, and that's positive. And when we look at results from the last 3 years, and we've done this with the Ottawa Chamber of Commerce previous 2 years, we see a steady increase in overall confidence. A number over 100 represents a positive confidence. So since 2013, we've seen positive confidence, but that has grown consistently since that time. So good growth. There's a positive feeling in the community, although we do see some differences depending on the sector. So if you're in the high-tech sector, if you're in tourism, you're feeling a little more confident in Ottawa today than if you're in the retail sector, where we saw some sluggish confidence relative to some of the other sectors. Now, to understand what might be driving this positive reaction, we went a little bit deeper, and we wanted to investigate some different areas. And one of the questions we've traditionally asked in this survey is, what are the business barriers? Are you facing any barriers to doing business in the city? And along with growing confidence, we note in this round of research that fewer business leaders are reporting barriers for them to doing business. Just over half, 52%, report that there were some barriers for them, a decline of 20 points from the previous year's survey. And when we ask people and business leaders what are those barriers, we get a range of responses that are similar, actually, to what we saw last year. Number one being access to a skilled workforce. 2, access to capital, business taxes, and business and licensing permitting issues. And there's obviously differences across sector, but we understood that this question of access to skilled labor has been something that it's not just an Ottawa problem. I think it's a problem we see across the country. We see the federal government trying to deal with it with its job program. We see the province trying to manage it, that there seems to be a mismatch between the skills that businesses need and the talent that's out there, or the ability to re-educate those who are transitioning out. So we wanted to understand what it was. And we did research with the Canadian Council of Chief Executives, and they too are feeling this question, and they wanted to know. So we wanted to know what was the problem. And I don't think it's surprising that among those who said that access to skilled labor was a barrier to business, when we asked them what was specifically driving that, 2 things really stood out. One was that almost every business that identified this as a problem said that they're having a hard time finding employees that have specific technical skills. Okay? Secondly, it's about employees who have some experience. So if you're younger like me and you're coming out of post-secondary, while there's lots of opportunities, you may not have the skills that a business is looking for, but you also may not have the experience. And that's what Ottawa businesses are talking about. A third one, which is interesting, is, and some of you employers in the room may feel this way, is that there seems to be a lack of soft skills with the new generation of employees, that we somehow don't know how to answer a phone, don't want to answer a phone, don't know how to talk to people in person, have a hard time networking at events like this. These are all skills that traditionally the post-secondary system doesn't teach us, but we do a lot of research on younger generations, and there's clearly been a shift. And businesses report that this is one of the challenges that they're facing, is not only finding the people who have the right skills and training, but sometimes employees who have the right frame of mind and motivation to actually do the work that they're looking for. So there is clearly a desire among the business community in the city addressing this challenge. And we'll have Cheryl Jansen from Algonquin College to talk about this and how the college is trying to improve the situation. The survey also looked at the political consequences and some political questions. And Mayor Watson, who is a strong advocate for our city, is viewed very positively by the business community. Almost 70% of those that we surveyed approve of the job he is doing as mayor. Very few disapprove. So his approval rating, his leadership has, I think, been recognized by the business community. When it comes to city council and city staff, results are a little bit more muted. Not necessarily people disapproving of city staff or the council, just less aware, perhaps, of what they're doing or their role that they may play. And I think these results demonstrate that although there are still challenges with City Hall in terms of business permitting and perhaps property taxes and those kinds of things, that generally speaking, I think many of us in this room and across the city will say that Mayor Watson brings stability and a focus to City Hall that the business community appreciates. Now, I always get asked, as a pollster who does more public opinion research at the federal level, what's going to happen in October, right? I have no idea. The national polls are suggesting it's a three-way race right now. Tom Mulcair is surging. The NDP is going to sweep the nation. And for the business community maybe in the room, we're kind of a little shocked at that and ask Albertans how they feel. But when you ask business leaders, which of the three main leaders do you think is really going to be best for their business, we find, I don't think surprising that Stephen Harper comes out on top. For example, when it comes to expanding international trade opportunities, 63% of businesses we surveyed said he would do better than either Justin Trudeau or Tom Mulcair. When it comes to keeping corporate taxes low, again, Stephen Harper comes well ahead. And then when it comes to helping to create a business climate that can help support growth, Stephen Harper is ahead there, although Justin Trudeau does better. Interestingly, when we ask people which leader is best for the businesses in the National Capital Region, it's much closer. And Stephen Harper and Justin Trudeau are pretty much tied, and the results are in the survey. So, not surprising, the business community in the city may be a little more conservative than the rest of the population, or at least recognizing the different policy positions that the leaders and their parties will take. A few more questions and to share results. One of them, we asked people improvements to which of the following local economic development activities would have the greatest impact. And I don't think it's surprising that a plurality of businesses said that training and mentorship for entrepreneurship would have the greatest impact, followed by improving local funding and angel networks. So clearly, there's a recognition that encouraging entrepreneurship, matching training and new ideas with business opportunities is something that will drive growth. And then lastly, we asked people, which sector has the greatest opportunity for growth in Ottawa? And business community, almost the majority said that the tech sector had the largest opportunity, followed by tourism, services, and healthcare. So Ottawa is still seen primarily outside our city as a government town, maybe even here in the city. But when we look at the private sector, the business community sees real opportunities in technology and in tourism. So to wrap up, what's the upshot of all this? Well, first of all, local business confidence is up and positive, right? Despite some mixed results at the national level, shrinking GDP, despite rising employment, I think Ottawa is feeling good about itself and the business community. We have strong, stable municipal leadership. We have good business conditions for tourism, a low dollar, keeping Canadians here instead of traveling elsewhere. And despite a few years of cutbacks in the federal government, that's opened up, I think, some skilled labor for the private sector to take advantage of. And I think with four great post-secondary institutions in the city, we've got a regular supply of highly trained workers. Access to skilled labor and capital, though, remain challenges that businesses not only face today, but are saying in 5 years they're going to have to deal with. Our greatest opportunities are seen in the tech and tourism sector, and as I said, there's strong confidence in local political leadership, which leads us to say that we should be optimistic, I think, as a community about where our private sector is going, about the impact that we have, not only in terms of job creation, wealth creation, but also in terms of the impact that it has on the community and all the contributions that the corporate community play in the city. So, very quick rundown of the results. I do want to thank Welch, the Ottawa Business Journal, and the Chamber for this opportunity. This kind of data, I think, is needed. We often get national or provincial level data, but understanding the nuances of our local community is really important. It helps us understand where we are and how we get and communicate, and allows us to communicate these to the different stakeholders, both at City Hall, at Queen's Park, and in the federal government. So thank you very much to the partners for that, and I will turn things over to Jim. Thank you.
Delighted to be here this morning on behalf of Welch LLP. I'd like to thank David for his comprehensive and interesting overview of the survey and the results. David and the Abacus team have been instrumental to this inaugural Ottawa Business Growth Survey, and we greatly appreciate this involvement. We're very happy to be part of the Business Growth Survey because it provides an opportunity to have a better understanding of the pulse of our business community, the current economic sentiment, and the outlook for the future. This survey was developed to help our business community and local business leaders. Our goal is to provide analytical information that is helpful to the business community and to Ottawa in general. We hope that the reference guide that we've left you will be a handy source of information. In addition to Abacus data, we greatly appreciated partnering with the Ottawa Business Journal and the Ottawa Chamber of Commerce. Most of all, we'd like to thank you, the business community, for participating in the survey and for being here this morning. So before I introduce our panelists, I'd like to talk a bit about a live polling exercise that we'll do this morning. So we'll have 3 audience questions that will run sort of as our panel discussion is going on. What will happen is the question will go up, and then as a group, you'll have an opportunity to register your vote amongst a few selected voting options. So at every table, there is a voting remote. There is 1 per table. The question will be up for a minute or 2 minutes. So what I'd ask you to do is when the question comes up, I'll read the question, and then just share the voting device. You only get to vote once, so pass it along the table and vote once. It'll be interesting because we'll see the votes being tabulated as the votes are coming in. We'll probably, time permitting, have an opportunity for our panelists to comment on the live data that we're seeing. Please also note that our panel discussion will include an opportunity for questions from the audience. I believe we'll have 2 microphones for that purpose, and we'll do that sort of in the latter part of the panel discussion. There'll be about 10 or 15 minutes for questions from the audience, but I will prompt the group when we're ready for that part of the discussion. So before we get to our first audience question, I'll invite the panelists to come up, Cyril, Cheryl, and Jeff. So we have here our first live polling question. So the question is, which of the following will have the biggest economic impact on Ottawa? And the options are A, the LRT project, B, Canada's 150th birthday, C, the redevelopment of LeBreton Flats and Chaudière Island, or D, the Sens winning the Stanley Cup. So interesting results. There seems to be a clear winner, which is A, the LRT project. And number 2 would be the redevelopment of LeBreton Flats and the Chaudière Island. Maybe I'll ask Cyril your thoughts on the results and whether or not they're surprising.
No, I don't think that's surprising. I think the LRT will certainly transform our city over the next 5 to 10 years. And the LeBreton Flats is one of the best urban sites in the entire country. And we're obviously bidding on that site right now, and have had a number of conversations with people outside of Ottawa. You talk about the Chaudière Islands, LeBreton, and the Bayview Yards. It's 100 acres of land, on the Ottawa River, a few blocks from our Parliament buildings, and people recognize that it's a jewel, and it will transform our city, and it will certainly be an economic boon for us as well.
Cheryl?
Yeah, well, I think we didn't vote for in Cyril's way because we just know that the Sens are going to win the Stanley Cup next year.
There you go. Thanks, Cheryl.
It goes without saying. I do believe that a strong LRT system is key to a safe, healthy, vibrant city. So that is an obvious first to me, and the Flats project is just a perfect example of urban rejuvenation and is key to the city.
Jeff?
Yeah, I think the LRT is a good example of a trend that's happening across, or a trend that I think everyone in Ottawa is seeing, and that's that historically, I think Ottawa has always thought of ourselves as a big, small city. And I think we're now changing our view and saying, no, we're a small, big city, and we should think like a big city. We should think like a world-class city and the things we can do. And I think the LRT is a good example of us just changing the class that we play in, changing the league that we play in as a city. I'm not going to comment on number 3 because I have a bias, but hands down the most exciting thing to happen in the region ever.
Thank you. So Jeff, talking about biased opinions, my first question is for you. Jeff, you're spearheading one of the most transformational, ambitious real estate project in Ottawa in decades. Are you confident that the local economy can support the project?
Yeah, I think if I had to bet on a Canadian city, I would bet on Ottawa hands down right now. A couple of stats to think about. Ottawa has raised more money in tech IPOs in the last 5 years than every other Canadian city combined. If you look at Kinaxis, Shopify, Halogen, and then there's a number of private companies that are growing as well, like Ross Video that exports all over the world. So there's a tremendous amount of growth going on in Ottawa. And Ottawa, we're a region of 1 million people. But if you look at our private sector, we get compared to cities like Calgary, for instance, which is about our size. But if you look at the size of our private sector compared to Calgary's, we're about a quarter the size, and yet we punch way above our weight class. So our private sector is very healthy. I think you've seen our federal government come through some tough times. We expect to see a fair amount of growth out of the public sector here in coming years. So no, if I had to bet on a Canadian city, and probably any city in North America, it would be Ottawa right now, and I'm not alone in that. Financial Times named us the number 2 city for business friendly, or sorry, number 1 city for business friendliness, and number 2 for economic development potential. That's high praise.
Thank you, Jeff. Cheryl, I'll ask you the next question. How can Algonquin College assist with workplace training for employees for the 40% of employers who do not provide enough training for existing employees?
Yeah, you know, this, we mentioned earlier that the skills gap is not just an Ottawa issue, it's a provincial and national issue. It's talked about at every conference I go to. I think in Ottawa, we are very fortunate to have a city that recognizes that so highly in the survey, so clearly a top issue for our city. And that we have a college like Algonquin, where I've got a table here today of folks that spend their time on corporate training, working on partnerships with the city to make sure that we're in line with the needs of the city. You know, when I come from a background where partnerships are so important, if we work together to develop very interesting models where we give just-in-time delivery of the skill training that our companies need in Ottawa to succeed, I don't think there's anything stopping us here in Ottawa. We've got, you know, Algonquin's 20,000 students. We've got huge strength in the software engineering field. And so we've got an army of graduates and co-op students and interns that are available. I always think of co-op as a long interview, so come and see us, and we'll both make sure that our students have those soft skills that we talked about, but also have the technical skills that are aligned to what the industry needs. So, and if I can just mention about the skills that are necessary for productivity and that entrepreneurial spirit, that's something that I know we're building into all of our programs. So we're open for business.
Thank you. Cyril, the University of Ottawa released a report last year that indicated that the Ottawa Senators were a major social force and economic generator for Ottawa-Gatineau. Does the club actively pursue opportunities to drive economic growth, and if so, how?
Yes, I think like a lot of the people in this room, we're very reliant on the local economy and local business for our existence. And as as the economy grows and it does better here in Ottawa, by very definition, the Senators will do better as well. So we really feel the rising tide floats all boats in our case. So we've been very strategic in economic development, and in Ottawa, the three main drivers are government, tech, and tourism, and we really felt that tourism was the area that we could actually make a material difference. So we've been bidding on major events for about 15 years now, and I can say early on in that process, we weren't very successful. It was really being done out of the top drawer of my desk, and about 8 years ago, we made the commitment to form a small strategic group within our organization to go after major events. And since then, we've been a lot more successful. And Jeff Bubble, I think Jeff's here, heads up that group for us. And since that time, we've had the World Juniors, we've had the World Women's Hockey Championship, we've had Canadian Figure Skating, 5 CIS basketball championships, 2 NHL drafts, an NHL All-Star game. And it's not just because we're focused on it. I think as a community, we're much better organized now. We've got a Tourism Development Council that actively goes after events. And the City of Ottawa has made a real commitment, from the mayor to actively pursue events for the city. And it's not just major events that we focus on. At the grassroots level, through our Sensplex operations, we try to bring tournaments here on a regular basis. And we're bringing about 80 tournaments a year now to Ottawa. And between those 80 tournaments and the Bell Capital Cup, generating over $50 million a year in economic activity, which is good for the local economy.
Thank you, Cyril. Jeff, I guess get the sense, and I know the Westani family has been heavily involved in the community for so many years, but I get the sense that it's intuitive for you and your organization to also try and drive economic growth beyond what matters to your business day to day. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're citizens of the region, and as Cyril said, a rising tide floats all boats. So it started with my mom and dad moved here in '78, and I think in very short order got involved in the community, and some of the things that I've done, being the chair of Invest Ottawa, or now the vice chair of the Innovation Center. When I walk in and look on the wall, there's a picture of my mother or father who were there 25 years ahead of me doing the same thing. So I think it is critically important to every business in this room that our overall economy does well. And the mistake that we often make is we look across the table and say, there's my competition. Your competition doesn't sit across the table. They sit in Dusseldorf or in Tokyo. And we as a region need to think that way. So I think that's sort of the focus that we bring as a family and as a business to this region.
Thank you, Jeff. Cheryl, would that thinking be transferable to a public institution like Algonquin? And by that I mean, does Algonquin have a role to play in overall economic development in Ottawa beyond the education aspect?
Absolutely. I've been working with the mayor and the mayor's staff about the fact that every city has areas of challenges, and certainly the homeless youth that is a concern in this city is something that concerns every single staff person at Algonquin. And I strongly believe that the way that we really contribute to a healthy city is by making sure that every single citizen has hope that post-secondary is in their future. So we are reaching out in the city, not just bringing people into our college, but reaching out to the city and saying, how do we make sure that those youth who are our future here in Ottawa and who we depend on for economic prosperity are given every opportunity to succeed? And that after we work with those populations, there's no reason, as Jeff said, why they have to finish at Algonquin. They can finish at U of O, at Carleton. They can work with our employers. So we have a really strong access and community development strategy and focus and purpose at Algonquin.
Let's move on to our polling question number 2, so keeping the audience involved. So a business-related question. In the next 12 months, which of the following will be your most pressing business priority? A is grow revenue, B is grow profits, C is reduce expenses, D is improve or expand your workforce, and E is improve systems or efficiency.
Where's all the above? Button in front of
All the above is not an option.
Okay.
Choose one.
So A seems to be the very clear winner. Growing revenue is a key focus for the business community at 47%. Sort of diversified after that, but interesting that E was the number 2 choice in terms of improving systems and efficiency. Cyril, does that resonate with your view of the business community?
I think so. I think that's right on the mark. I think we're focused on sort of growing our revenue base on a regular basis, and the businesses we deal with, that's top of mind when they're asking us for whether it's a ticket proposal or sponsorship proposal. The expectation is we're going to help them grow their revenues.
Thank you. Cheryl?
Yeah, only 40% of the college's budget is supported by government. So for all the great things that we do, we're constantly looking for new sources of revenue, and that's working with you, but also increasing our footprint across the world. So growing revenue while making sure that we're focused on the social enterprise of the city is very important.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, I think it's very indicative of Ottawa. If you look in the tech sector, top-line revenue is critical. It talks a lot about market penetration. So those companies I talked about before, Kinaxis, Halogen, Shopify, they want to get their software on people's desktops and in their enterprises. Profitability comes second once you have that market penetration. So I'm not at all surprised to see that from the Ottawa business community.
Thank you. Sort of unexpected, I've got a live question that just come in by email, which not a lot of people have my email, but I'll read the question. It's for Cyril. Have the senators ever contemplated the acquisition of Jeff Westeindy, who is well known as a mobile, robust defense, to be paired with Eric Carlson?
Jeff obviously has your email.
He apparently does.
I might have sent that earlier today, but I am very interested in the answer, Cyril.
No, we don't think we've ever considered that.
That's a good
Shocking,
answer.
really.
Jeff, I will ask you the next question. So besides the Chaudière Island project, Windmill is also building residential buildings such as the Eddy and Cathedral Hill. There's a lot of press about the headwinds for the whole condo industry in Canada. What is your level of optimism or comfort with the condo market in Ottawa today and in the future?
Yeah, I think earlier when I said that Ottawa is turning into a small, big city, that's very hopeful for us in the urban development game. Urbanization in major cities is a significant factor. If you look at Toronto, Vancouver as Canadian cities, but every other major city in the world, the trend towards urbanization, the trend towards people wanting to live in the core is significant. Here in Ottawa, we've only just begun that. I've got 5 kids between the ages of 18 and 24. None of them own a car. None of them want to live in the suburbs. They all want to be able to walk to work. I had one of my daughters works at Shopify. Her boyfriend had his 29th birthday up at my cottage on the weekend. I had a dozen of them up. 8 of them were millionaires. They all live in the core. They all want to stay in the core. So that's the younger set. The older set, my parents just recently bought a condo at Cathedral Hill, and again, you're seeing that continued urbanization. So I think in Ottawa and in Gatineau, there's a tremendous amount of growth for downtown intensification. So we're pretty bullish on this market, given the type of product that we're always in the core, always urban.
Thank you, Jeff. Cheryl, how can post-secondary education institutions like Algonquin work with business to ensure the graduates are prepared with the business skills they need for today?
We already, I think, do an okay job on this. We have program advisory committees for every single program that we run at the college, and just met with them recently. They give us so much information on how their industry, how their businesses are changing, and how our students, our graduates have to change. I think we can do much more in that way. The way we are running our programs are changing so that we have what I'll call badges or certificates that give the specific skills that employers need. You can't wait for 2 or 3 years for a new set of graduates who have a new program. We have to become much more embedded with you and make sure that you get those skills that you need, both of the people that are working for you, but also the younger graduates that are coming out of our programs. And you know, we already do this really, really well with Carleton. We have combined technology, engineering programs, bachelor programs that have both the skills the hands-on skills of a college graduate, but also those soft skills that are needed in the future. So we're open for you to come to us and let us know what you need to succeed in a short period of time. But we're also out there making sure that we're talking to you. So the world is changing in post-secondary education, and that's because the timeline you need for decision making is becoming shorter. So help us to do that. We're leaders in that field, and we plan on being leaders in that field in the future.
Thank you. Cyril, the NCC has finally turned its attention to the redevelopment of the LeBreton Flats, and the Senators have been shortlisted for the right to develop the site, and your arena would be part of that plan and the future home of the Ottawa Senators. So why are the Senators interested in LeBreton Flats, and if they were successful, what would this mean for the downtown business community?
Our interest is there, as Jeff indicated, for a couple of reasons. One is the intensification downtown. So there's more activity now downtown. People want to be downtown. They want to live there. They want to be entertained there. They want to have their businesses there as well. And the LRT is going to change all of that. So we're about 3 years away from having the first phase of the LRT completed. Within a few years of that, we hope to have a second phase done, which will then have connectivity right to Barrhaven, to Orleans, and to Bayshore. When that happens, we really feel that the place to be would be along the LRT line for our team long term. And at LeBreton, that's the hub of the Confederation line, the east-west, and the north-south line, the Trillium line, will be right there at LeBreton. So we think strategically it'll be more accessible to more people to be along that line, and that over time, people are going to want to be downtown, want to live downtown, work downtown. So we think that's the right long-term strategy. And what will it mean to the business community? Well, Jeff's going first down there with the windmill, with the ZB development. So if they don't screw it up, we should have a pretty good thing going.
No pressure.
But
I can always fall back on my career as a hockey player.
As a hockey player, yeah. No, you can't, Jeff. So but seriously, what it'll mean, it's going to transform. I think I said this already. It's going to transform our downtown core. It's just going to add a new dimension down there. It's 100 acres of undeveloped land. It's going to be a spectacular piece of property when it's all developed out, and that'll happen in this generation. It's not going to be 30, 40 years. It's the next 10 or 15 years. Bayview, LeBreton, and the ZB site are all going to be developed. It's going to really change our city for the better.
Thank you, Cyril. Jeff, as a related question, the LRT project is well in progress and well on track. Do you have a sense if the Chaudière Island development and LeBreton Flats development would be viable in the absence of the LRT?
I might actually turn the question on its head. The question is, would our city exist without that area? So our city started down on Chaudière and what was then Wright Island, which is now in Gatineau, and spilled over into LeBreton Flats, spilled over into Bayview Yards. Our federal government, over the course of the last 60, 70 years, completely sterilized that history of our city, and we ended up with a big hole in the donut down there. There's a reason we started there. It is a natural place to center a city. It's between the two existing downtown cores of Ottawa and Gatineau. So I think it is obviously of a huge benefit to have public transit like an LRT running through that area. But my instinct says that development would have happened with or without the LRT. But I applaud the thinkers, both at the province and at the city, for getting the LRT going. As everyone here knows, it was controversial for a little while. And I think our next big challenge is to take advantage of our friends in Gatineau and the relationship we have between our two premiers to get a public transit system for our region, versus right now we have a very disjointed one. So that'll be the next big challenge, to really tie that area together.
Thank you, Jeff.
Could I just add to that? I think one of the really important things that I see in Ottawa is we don't often talk about either or, we talk about and I think if we look at all of these projects and what they're doing for the city of Ottawa, it's because we're courageous enough to say both of these need to happen. And if we take a look at the college population in particular, over 80%, I would say 85% of the students that go to college come from the community, usually within an hour commute of the community. And this is the kind of thing that young people are looking for to stay in their city. So I would really encourage all of us to talk about and rather than one or the other.
Thank you, Cheryl. Cheryl, as a question for you, how does Algonquin adapt to the economy that is, evolving day to day, but also anticipating where the economy might be 10 or 15 years from now, and adapting the students or preparing the students so that they're able to perform effectively in that new economy?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question, and the beauty of a college system is that we're constantly reinventing ourselves and reinventing our programs. So as we bring new programs on stream to meet the trends of the future, we're sunsetting programs that no longer serve that need. And we try as much as we can to have that crystal ball, and it really means that we have to be focusing on what are those trends and skills. We're now working on our next strategic plan, which will give us a nice 5-year roadmap, but also really taking a look digitally and in this wonderful world of technology where things are going. Just one example of that is that we're the only college in Canada that's moved completely to e-textbooks. So in 2017, all of our programs will be offered with e-textbooks. Beautiful system with half the cost to the students. And that's an example of how technology is really changing the face of education.
I can jump in on that. I think our post-secondaries are doing a tremendous job of taking advantage of some of the trends that you see in the business world. And the trends really are, if you look at the largest accommodation company in the world right now, Airbnb, they own no hotel rooms, no accommodation. The largest taxi company on the planet, Uber, no taxis. So the way that things are changing is tremendous, and our post-secondaries here, I think one of the brands that would do Ottawa well is to be branded as Canada's education capital. We've got, I think, 100,000 students here in town, and the cooperation amongst those post-secondaries to see what can we do to make this city sticky, for those young people, for particularly the people that are coming from out of town here, is tremendous. So I applaud you and your counterparts for that.
Yeah, I don't know any other city where the presidents of all the institutions meet on a regular basis to talk about where we can go in the future, and that happens right here in Ottawa.
Thank you. Cyril, the Senators as an organization really derive a key part of the revenue from discretionary consumer spending. What is your take on sort of the current state of consumer spending in Ottawa, but also of the trend that you're seeing going forward?
Yeah, the current state is that people are spending more discretionary dollars on entertainment and sports, so that's good for our business, obviously. The trend, really have to look at hockey separate from the rest of our business, which really is music. And in the hockey side, what we're seeing, and this is not just in Ottawa, it's around North America, all the research is showing that people that go to sporting events, they want the ability to move around at the event. They don't want to be confined to a seat or a suite. They want the opportunity to get up and walk around and be part of a social network or networking, interacting with other people. So that's one of the trends, and we're moving to capitalize on that or to meet that requirement. We're making the largest single investment we've ever made in the Canadian Tire Centre this year, brand new Club Bell that will kind of be able to allow people to move around, would also have 3 different seating options for them to sit in. And then on the music side, the trend there has been, which is a good trend as well, artists now make the bulk of their money by touring. They don't make it from CDs or from records. So we're getting more shows, and the bigger artists that used to just work out of the studio can't do that anymore. They've got to tour. So we're getting more shows and better shows. And what's happened is the internet has made it possible for a consumer to buy a ticket at any event at any time because of the secondary ticketing market. So no event on the planet is ever sold out. So you can buy a ticket to any event, it's just a question how much are you going to pay. And that's a trend. So people are going to more shows, and what that means is they are a little more particular about the shows they go to, and they want great service because they tend to pay more for those opportunities. So we've had to kind of move to make sure we're able to provide that high level of service that people are asking for, and really keep our eye on the secondary market and the secondary ticket sales.
Thank you, Cyril. Jeff, you commented on this briefly in one of your earlier responses, but do you think there is a good opportunity for the Ottawa business community to work more closely with Gatineau, the Outaouais, and benefit from regional development programs?
Yeah, my first in-depth exposure to Gatineau is really on the ZB project itself. And I have to admit, I'm embarrassed of how little I knew about what goes on the other side of the river. And what has hit me in the face is we have a tremendous opportunity to take advantage of the differences. Oftentimes we look from one side of the river to the other and just notice the differences, but we don't actually say, what can we do with that? An example would be Ericsson was scouring the planet for a new research center that was very power intensive. Ottawa was shortlisted, as was a suburb of Montreal. They picked the suburb of Montreal because of lower power prices. If they had been in Gatineau, Ottawa would have benefited. For every job that we have here in Ottawa, 30% of the people live in Gatineau. For every job they have in Gatineau, 70% live here. So from an economic development point of view, then if we collaborated, and as Cyril was talking about attracting major events, right now, by and large, not exclusively, but by and large, Ottawa will act on its own and often turn to the province of Ontario to say, can you support us on this? We should be roping Quebec in. And cities and regions have windows of opportunity to take advantage of things like this. Our two premiers actually like each other. Probably for the first time in my lifetime that I remember the two premiers cooperating. Our two mayors like each other. So it behooves us as a region to really take advantage of what we can do as a region. So I can't encourage that enough, and I personally, I don't think we're doing anywhere near enough to take advantage of those differences right now.
Cyril, the same would be the case for the senators, that there's a strong benefit to having that key presence in the Outaouais?
Absolutely. That we are one city, one census metropolitan area, Ottawa and Gatineau, and if we're not taking advantage of that 30% of our community, then we're doing ourselves a disservice. And we're very active on the Gatineau side, from a community point of view and from a business growth point of view, and we're very bullish on it as well.
Cheryl, does that translate to the educational environment as well?
Oh, absolutely. The more and more colleges and institutions are differentiating in terms of their strengths, I think that the boundaries are really artificial. And so if we can work with our counterparts across the border, but also bring them to our college, many of our students come from the area, and it just makes our economy stronger.
Thank you. I'll move on to polling question number 3. So this one is fairly straightforward, and the question is, how has the recent depreciation of the Canadian dollar impacted your business? And there are 3 options. A is it's been a positive impact, B it's been a negative impact, or C there's been no impact. Very interesting in that it's a very strong result that there's no impact at 57%, and then fairly close in terms of a positive or negative impact at 25 versus 18%. Maybe Cyril, if you'd like to comment on your perspective.
Well, we might be the only guys in the room here that generate most of our revenues in Canadian dollars, but most of our expenses are in U.S., so it's a negative impact. And every time the dollar moves a cent, it's about a $600,000 impact for us. So it's when we're watching all the time. My TV in my office is not set to TSN. It's on the Business News Network, and we're watching the dollar on a regular basis. So.
Cheryl?
Yeah, I'll turn it around a little bit, as presidents often do. I come from an area of Ontario where the dollar was very important because of the effect on manufacturing. And I would say that one of the What I'm watching very closely is how we can start to neutralize that effect of the dollar on manufacturing. And if you've been following 3D printing at all, that's where we're going to have a huge opportunity, I think, in Canada on really taking that value-added manufacturing. I think there's a huge role for that sector here in Ottawa, that combination of technology, software engineering, manufacturing of very, very specialized parts and equipment, and we don't have to worry so much in Ontario and in Canada about the effect of the dollar.
Jeff?
Yeah, I think the results speak to the diversity of our economy. So we do have, there's a couple of companies like cereals that are the unfortunate recipients of expenses in American dollars and revenues in Canadian dollars, but many of our businesses are actually the opposite. So I'm not at all surprised to see a real diversity in answers there.
Thank you. So we will have an opportunity for the audience to ask questions. I think we have 2 microphones. I know there's one here and there'll be just one microphone. Okay. I'll just wrap up though. I'll do a few final rapid fire questions, but if you have a question for the panelists, be ready and you'll be able to ask your question at the microphone. In terms of rapid fire questions, I'll give each of you a chance to answer. Number 1, how many people are employed by your organization? Jeff?
We've got about 50 here in Ottawa and about 600 across the country.
So we've got about almost 1,300 full-time, about 1,800 part-time because of the change in our programs, large organization over our 3 campuses.
Cyril?
225 full-time, over 1,000 part-time, and at any one time 15 to 20 interns or co-ops.
Thank you. Jeff, do you expect the number of employees to grow over the next 12 months?
Here in Ottawa, absolutely. We've taken over another floor of the building that we're in. We're going to be moving to the ZV site because we're out of space, so we'll be probably doubling the size in the next year here.
A little bit, depending on growth. We've been growing over the last 10 years, but not huge numbers like you'd see in other sectors.
Cyril?
Yes, we're growing as well, and OttawaSenators.com for job information.
Jeff, do you have a favorite book on business or leadership?
Good to Great, Bill Collins. Get your vision right, the rest takes care of itself.
Excellent.
Clayton Christensen, Disruptive Innovation books.
Well, my business, Moneyball's a business book, so Moneyball's, but the traditional business book would be Raving Fans by Blanchard and Bowles.
Yeah. What one word would you use to describe the Ottawa business community?
I'm going to steal from my friend Harley Finkelstein at Shopify, and that's hustle. We hustle in this town.
Excellent.
Fearless.
Fearless.
I'd say smoldering, but a proper description is probably ready for liftoff.
Excellent. Jeff, if your organization has a hockey team, who will be the starting goalie at the start of the next hockey season?
His name's Scott Agnew.
Cheryl?
So I look at goalies as kind of keeping things away, and and keeping things safe. That would be my VP Finance and Admin. But if I turned it around a little bit, I would say my center would be my new VP of Digital Technologies and Innovation.
Cyril?
I got to answer that question?
Yes, it is mandatory.
Well, I've been on this question before when we didn't have any number 1 goalies. So the reason this is a question this year is we got 3 number 1 goalies. It's a much better problem to have this year than in past years where we weren't sure if we had 1 number 1 goalie. But I couldn't tell you. I don't think Brian Murray or Dave Cameron could tell you who's going to be our starting goalie at this point.
Cyril, we both answered the question.
Yeah.
It was a cop-out. Thank you. Thank you all for your responses. They were very helpful. We'll turn it over now to questions from the audience.
Yes, my name is Clarence Lougheed. I'm with an organization here in Ottawa called Hire Immigrants Ottawa. And thank you all for the discussion, the presentations. It was all excellent. Very interested in the kind of the top line finding of the survey about employers saying access to skills as being a main barrier to doing business in Ottawa. And I can't help but think that, and I guess the question is for Cyril really, because there's probably not an organization I can think of that probably pays more attention to talent management. You seek top talent, both from around the world, but when you get that talent, you spend an enormous amount of time too in developing it, bringing it along. So you're looking for that, maybe sometimes that just-in-time star that can help you out in a playoff run. But I think you pay a lot of attention to bringing along young talent, developing talent, and certainly honing skills throughout the season. So I would just, not to push the analogy too far, but would you have any sort of words of wisdom based on your and the Senator's sort of experience with talent management as to how employers can do a better job perhaps, or be more successful in getting access and perhaps developing the talent that they need to overcome what seems to be a significant barrier to growth?
Yeah, I think the best advice I can give you that may be an analogy between hockey and business is, when we scout, you're basically making a guess, an educated guess. You're picking these kids, they're 17 years old, and you draft them, and they're on your team. But what we do after we draft them, I think, that distinguishes the Senators from the other 29 teams in the league. We really spend a lot of effort, time, and resources developing our talent once we've drafted them. So we spend an inordinate amount of time with these guys, and it does pay off down the road. So I think the analogy here is, once you find good talent, it's what you do with it that really counts. How much are you prepared to spend, and effort you're prepared to spend to develop them, to help get them to be as productive as they can be for your organization. And we've got a good history there. Guys like Randy Lee have been excellent at helping us develop draft picks. And that's the difference is, we give all the guys the tools to be successful. It's what they do with those tools that determines whether he's going to be a first liner in the American Hockey League or he's going to make it to the National Hockey League. It's the effort that goes in from both sides. So we give them the tools. We expect them to have the effort to develop themselves to become a good pro. I think the analogy is the same in business, is find your talent, spend some effort in training them and develop them once you've got them.
Cheryl, did you want to add something?
Yes, just to add to that, we don't have to look too far to see where that kind of investment in talent is really done well, and that's the apprenticeship program that grew up in Europe. And I would encourage all of us to take a look. We're not really great in Canada of taking that kind of model of training and developing our people, where it's a cooperation in terms of the education, but then really spending time with those mentors or journey persons, if we can call them that, in the companies, and continually improving our staff and making sure that we have those formal education programs in place. It works really well when it's invested in, and I think that's something that we have to really focus on in Canada.
Thank you.
I'll just maybe give a quick shout out to HIO, to Hire Immigrants Ottawa. The work they do is tremendous, and one of the reasons why we as a community should support immigrants is for our own self-interest. If you look at most entrepreneurs, they are immigrants. Terry Matthews, Toby Lutke, Paul Lukes, all of which have won CEO of the Year here in Ottawa at some point in time. All immigrants outperform, from an entrepreneurial point of view, outperform people that grew up in this region. I forget the stat, but it's called 7 out of 10 times. So thank you to HIO for making those introductions, and I would encourage everyone in the city to make sure that you reach a hand out to newcomers to this city.
Thank you, Jeff. Another question?
Yes, there we go. My name is Mike Vandewater. I'm a chartered accountant and a consultant to small to medium enterprises. And I do apologize in advance for what I'm sure is going to be a contentious question. I've read Jim Collins' books. I've read Hayden Christensen's books. I've also read a lot by Peter Drucker. And one of the things he says, and there's a point coming, but slowly, one of the things he says is that technology, high tech, is actually the last place you want to invest for innovation, because it's very speculative and it has a great track record of destroying wealth before the eventual winners emerge. And anecdotally, of course, we can point, unfortunately, to Northern Telecom and to RIM in Canada. And I do not wish that, of course, on Shopify or Kinaxis or anyone else. I do apologize, as I said. Would like the panel's thoughts on whether or not we as a city should be focusing less on the technology sector and more on, if you want, bread and butter innovations. Shouting out to a company or an organization, an entrepreneur who created the Rumidifier, which is a piece of plastic that allows you to humidify your room in the winter without, it's completely green, for example, or turning another company that's turned coffee grinds into fireplace logs, turning literally garbage into gold, well, metaphorically. But I'll pass that on to the panel, their thoughts on innovation and whether we're focusing it in the right area.
Jeff, would you like to start?
Sure. I think every region needs to take a look at what natural resources or what resources do they have to build an economy around. And we're not a region that we started as a region that we harvested up and down the Ottawa River lumber and whatnot. But if you look at our resources now, we have the highest trained workforce in second highest number of PhDs and engineers in all of North America, second only to San Jose. You are right that technology is a major disruptor. It's hard to stay on top of the pile. However, if your resource is the 5 inches between your two ears, and we have an abundance of that, we can win that game of disruption. And we have been winning that game of disruption. And those winners outperform. If you look at the most valuable companies on the planet, I mentioned a couple of them, but Alibaba, largest retailer on the planet, again, no retail outlets, no inventory. The people that live here in Ottawa have the capability and have proven it year after year after year for 40, 50 years now, that we can outperform the rest of the planet. So why wouldn't we play in the big leagues? To avoid technology and say we should go back to standard industries, that's like saying that the Senators should fold their team and go back and play in the minor leagues. And I say no, we're a major class city. We can win that war, and we should be out there playing it.
Yeah, I would just add, back to what I said earlier, it's not an either or. I think that there is a huge market and a huge open space, white space, for that innovation in products. And, I don't think we should avoid that at all. But we avoid technology at our peril, because that's where you see that real nice merge and intersection of those high touch, if you like, products with technology. I'll give an example in the health field, and I do talk about 3D printing a lot. It's a passion of mine, but the fact that we can now print prosthetics in a day in the field, in countries where landmines are still a problem, is an example of how we can combine technology to make life better for people.
Cyril?
Yeah, I just say that like Stephen Jobs said that innovation really just distinguishes a leader from a follower. So it's not confined to technology. So we need to be innovative across all our sectors here in this community. And when I moved to Ottawa, the complaint was we're too dependent on the government. So the fact now that we're worrying about being too dependent on tech is probably a good thing, that we've got some diversity. And I think the more diversity we have over the next 15 or 20 years, the better. And I think tourism is an area that I think will grow and will give us that diversity. So I'm not afraid of tech. I think we need to have a booming tech sector in the city, and I hope we do for years to come. But I think we need to have diversity as well.
Thank you. We have time for one more question.
Hello, team. Thanks for speaking. I think most of us probably would like Jeff's wonderful voice and good looks and probably his cottage. So my question comes from, you mentioned earlier your daughter and her boyfriend, and 6 of them are millionaires. I look at the crowd here, and I feel we're graced with a lot of wisdom here. And I'm looking for those 29-year-old millionaires, and why aren't they here? The leadership is so important. I'm going to tie something else that Jeff and I work together at the United Way, which is, a lot of charities are going direct to consumer. They're trying to have a direct strategy for fundraising. And for most of these organizations, they're targeting young leaders and emerging leaders. And it doesn't have to mean age, by the way. It's just people who are emerging as leaders in the community. And so my question is, your observation right now in this community and leadership and outreach, why don't we have those 6 individuals from your cottage here, why aren't they here right now? What are we doing and what is being done right now to attract that kind of leadership? Because I think you're right. We want to play in the global market, national, whatever it is. We got to think big, and we rely on leadership to be able to take us there. And leaderships inspire people to move forward. So what are we doing about that? And what is being done? Yeah.
Thank you. Jeff?
Yeah, I think, it's hard to change human nature. As a young person growing up, most young men or young women want to do anything except for what their parents are doing. So I think what I'm really encouraged about is that, yes, if you look at the demographic in this room, it's not necessarily the young set present company up here accepted. But I also know what that young set is doing in our city. If I talk about Shopify for a second, the hackathons that they do in support of a lot of the local charities, the fundraising that happens inside that company, and many others, I'm really impressed with the social activism of that young crowd. For those of you who have never heard of the Hub, which is an incubation center strictly for social enterprises, if you go look at the demographic there, I'm going to say it's 27, 28 years old on average. And when you look at giving back to our city, the things that are going on in that demographic are tremendous. And I think, if anything, I am more hopeful that the under 30 set will be even more socially active than the people in this room. And I see the proof of that every day out there. So.
Yeah, I would just add to that. They're not in this room, but they're very quietly out there making a difference. I've just been so impressed in my year at Algonquin with the way that our students, as they're making their way through their programs, their projects are actually focused on fundraising and making a difference for the community. So they may be here before you know it, but they're out there, they're busy making a difference to the lives of our citizens of Ottawa.
Cyril?
Yeah, I think it's just personal preference. I think everybody gets to that point in their life at a different time. Some people get it at 20, some people get it at 30, others it takes a little longer to get to that point. And we see it. We've got as many under 25-year-old millionaires as anybody with our organization. And some of them get it right away. They walk in the door, they get a big contract, and first thing they want to do is do something great for the community. Other guys, it takes a little longer, start having children. That's usually the point when they start having kids that they really get it, that, my life's changed a bit. I've got to be a little more responsible, give back to the community. So I think from a leadership perspective, it's the same. It's just, that doesn't just happen overnight, and it's different for every person. That you can graduate from university, be a great leader. Other people, it takes longer to get to that point.
Thank you. So that wraps up our panel discussion part of the program this morning. I want to thank each of the individuals, Jeff, Cheryl, and Cyril. We greatly appreciate your time and coming out this morning to talk to us. As a gesture of appreciation, Welch will make a donation to a charity that each of you will choose, and we're glad to do that on your behalf. Please join me in giving a round of applause to our panelists.
Thank you.
And I'll now call on Michael Curran, publisher of the Ottawa Business Journal, to make some closing remarks. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Jim. I'd like to echo Jim's sentiments and thank each of our panelists for their participation in this morning's event, and also to David Coletto, the CEO of Abacus Data. The Ottawa Business Survey was conducted in partnership with Welch LLP, Abacus Data, the Ottawa Chamber of Commerce, and the Ottawa Business Journal. And I'd like to thank each of the partners for making this happen in a very short amount of time. Particularly, I want to single out this man, Bruce Ragnall, who I think pursued me for about 6 months. It's a little bit of a backstory I won't get into, but in fact, we mimicked a little bit of a project that was conducted in Long Island, and that was the basis for this project. Although we are approaching the end of the event, this is really just the beginning for the Ottawa Business Growth Survey. It's not a surprise that we live in a data-driven society, and data these days is so important to businesses, and yet we feel there's a deficit of local economic data, and that was precisely the reason for the Business Growth Survey. So we're very happy that almost 500 people participated in the survey. Having said that, we'd like to see that number double, triple, quadruple to really get deeper into the local economy. We will be doing an update of the survey this fall, so please stay tuned for that. And the next full Ottawa Business Growth Survey will be conducted next spring. And really, if you think about it, it took about 7 minutes, I think, David, to take the survey. So it's a very short amount of time. If enough people in the community did that, it would have a very big impact on the accuracy and completeness of data. And to keep the survey visible throughout the year, the Ottawa Business Journal will publish a piece of data from the survey in each issue. So that'll be visible to people 25 times a year. And in coming days, we'll launch a website where the full report can be downloaded. More information on that to come. Today's event was planned by Ottawa Business Events, a partnership between the Ottawa Business Journal and the Ottawa Chamber of Commerce. If you're interested in learning more about the events we have coming up, such as 40 Under 40 on June 18th, that's next Thursday, and we were speaking about innovation and technology a lot this morning. I'm happy to announce that Sir Terence Matthews from Mitel and Wesley Clover will be speaking at the final Mayor's Breakfast before our summer break. That's coming up on June 25th. That event is sure to sell out, and I think it'd be great to get an update from Terry Matthews on what's happening in this city as a technology sector transformed from mostly a telecom hardware to a software-based technology sector. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our program. Thank you so much for joining us, and please keep your eye open for updates to the Ottawa Business Growth Survey. Thank you again.